Hi, my name's Emmett, and I'm making this video because I've been meaning to make this video for a long time. It's kind of my introduction video, first video for my channel, because this channel has been around for a long time. It's been around for a few years. I feel very strongly about trans issues and issues regarding like sexuality and like homophobia and transphobia and that whole spectrum. And I wanted to make this video for probably like a few months because there's times where like I go to work and I hear things, and I go to school and I hear things, and it just triggers something in my brain and makes me want to rant. Because I rant to my friends all the time and I think they're sick and tired of hearing that. So I figured I would just put it out to the internet where you guys can just slam me for whatever I say, because that's always fun. I did a poll on Twitter a while back. I'm not listing my Twitter link here, I guess. Asking about like what you guys wanted me to make a video about, because I've been talking about it for a really long time. And so I had an overwhelming response for the acceptance process of being trans. So people wanted to talk to me, wanted me to talk about like coming out, so I'm gonna talk about that too, I guess. I don't know why anyone will listen to me talk, because I'm just like, This video is gonna be about the acceptance process of being trans, and that's going to be split into two categories. It's going to be split into like yourself, the internal acceptance process, I guess, of like coming to terms with being trans, and I'm also going to talk about what it's like acceptance wise for like your friends, family, loved ones, close people close to you. I don't know what that is. For me personally, a year ago was when I first kind of came to terms with being trans, and I like said the word for the first time. I had probably like feelings of being different and like questioning for about 3 years before that, and I don't know, it's just, unless you're there and you're going through it, it's very hard to come to terms with things like that, and it's scary. And I was in denial for a very long time, and I was very angry when I was younger, and I had a lot of not so good feelings about gay people and about trans people and about people who were like different from how I saw myself, and like how I saw myself as like a default cis female, I guess, because that's what was ingrained into my head. That's how I was raised by one half of my parental unit, I guess. I was questioning for a couple years, and I started to do research. There was a couple of my friends who started to question their gender as well. So I was curious about things. So my friends were throwing around words like agender, gender fluid. I never heard trans though, because trans has always been that word that's like very serious, and once you say it, people are like, oh no, you're trans, oh my god, what's that like, what's this? Like, oh, it's like very serious, and like with the word trans comes like transitioning, surgery, hormones, money. So I guess it took me 2 years of like denial and going through like a shit ton of different labels. Like I started out with saying I was demigirl because I never felt like fully female. I never felt like a cis female. I'd always had like male friends. I'd always had like male attributes that I found were like more masculine, they were feminine. I'd always had an interest in like masculine things like sports and cars and this and that and like all that kind of shit. It took me a long time of going from like demigirl, then thinking, oh no, maybe I'm gender fluid, I like presenting as both genders, and then it took me to agender, which I sat on that for like maybe like 5 months because I just didn't want to say the T word, as they'll call it, because that's how it was for me. And then one summer, last summer, I was sitting with my friends, we were around the campfire, it was getting very serious, we were talking about things, and I just sat there and I was like, I've never felt like a girl. And I guess that was the first time I officially ever said out loud that I was trans. And that's a big step, I guess, because I think I had always had that feeling that there was something off with me, like gender-wise, but I never thought like, no, like I can't be trans, like you never think it can happen to you, I guess. Not that it happened, it's always been that way. But I guess that's how people see it, that's how people view trans people, is that like one day there's just this like switch in your brain and like, oh, you're not female anymore, you're male. You're not male anymore, you're female. It's like, no, you've always been that way. That's how it is, that's how it always will be. So that acceptance process in yourself, I would say, is different for everybody, just like how the process of being trans is different for everybody. For me, it took years and like I was in very extreme denial when I was younger, and I wasn't a very nice person towards like gay people, towards trans people, just because I didn't understand. And I think because I wanted nothing to do with that, I didn't want to learn about it, because if I did, that would trigger something in my brain that would take me down that path. And like I'd always been taught that like that's not good, because I have a family member who is trans and who is very open about being trans, and I never even knew at that time that they were trans. I just knew that there was something wrong with them, that they had like the sex change, and people always say when they're talking about trans people like, oh, the sex change, blah blah blah. And I'd always heard like the horror stories of like people seeing her after like her surgeries for the first time and whatnot. So for me, like, I don't know, I'd always seen being trans as like a bad thing. So like I never wanted to be that, and I tried to remove myself as far as possible away from that. And it didn't take until I started to do research and I started looking at other people who were trans, and I started, people are gonna shit on me for this, but like when I went on Tumblr and I found other people who were trans, and I thought, oh, it's okay now. It's okay to be trans, it's okay to have a gender other than cisgender, because everyone's different in the world, and that's okay. So yeah, you have those, what I call like the 5 stages of grief or whatever, where you have like anger, depression, blah blah blah, acceptance. The acceptance part is like when you stop feeling like shit and you stop feeling angry and you start feeling happier about yourself, you start accepting yourself more, you start looking at yourself in the mirror and saying like, oh, this is who I am, I don't have to pretend anymore, I don't have to do this, I don't have to do that. And it's like, it's a big weight off your shoulders, I guess. It's good to know who you are, it's a good feeling to know who you are, and it's like, it's a very rewarding feeling. And like now that I know, I feel stupid for like living my life the way I did when I was younger. On to part 2. Friends, family, lovers, people you're close to. Lovers. Ah! My nose ball is gonna be coming out this whole video. Little Jimmy, get back in your house right now. So just as like it's different with like every individual person going through the acceptance process of being trans and coming to terms with your gender and all that kind of stuff. It's difficult because you don't know what other people are thinking. You don't know what your friends and family are thinking when you come out to them unless you like know them very closely. And like in my case, I knew my friends, so like when I came out to them, I expected them to be positive because we had talked about things like this before. So I was comfortable with that, but this is where I'm gonna bunch in like the coming out part. Because I didn't have to really experience this until recently, because I had it in my head for probably like a good year that like, oh, I wasn't gonna come out to my parents about like my gender or sexuality, I was just gonna go off to school and that was gonna be fine. If they found out about that, that's great, good for them, but I wasn't gonna tell them because that was my personal life, it's my personal journey, I guess. They didn't need to know about that, it's my life. Now that I'm done being bitter and I'm past that anger stage and I'm into more acceptance, if your family is nice and you are looking to have them in your life, you want to tell them because that's a part of you and they don't know who you are unless you like tell them. Family members can be people who have known you your whole life, and depending on how far along you are in your journey, how old you were when you came to accept and like deciding you want to transition or like came to terms with your gender, you could be like my age and be 19 and you basically already started into like young adulthood, and like these people have been with you your whole life and like along your journey growing up and such. So it's hard for them to kind of disconnect from like the person you were growing up or like the gender they saw you as to like the person that you are now. The way you are is the way you are. Like you're not gonna change. But people, when you tell them something and you say, hey, like I'm not your little girl, I'm actually your little boy, people are going to react like you have killed their child. Basically, I guess essentially in a way. It's like a death in the family. Coming out for me is hard, I guess. Because like you have to be ready. You have to be like personally ready to come out. You can't just like push yourself into it because you need to know what you're talking about. Because they're gonna ask lots of questions. Or maybe they're not gonna ask lots of questions and they're just gonna sit on it for a few days, which is like what my dad is doing at the moment. Because I came up to my dad like 2 weeks ago without my mom, because I know how my mom's gonna react. Should I take this off? Should I reveal my love for the shaky Nishio? Is It's getting a little hot in here. It's good in a way with like what's happening in society right now because trans people are starting to become more, I don't want to say mainstream because you get that whole like transgender thing going on, but basically like trans people are starting to get out there, get their names out there. Like Caitlyn Jenner, I would say, has an influence on my mother, who otherwise like would not appreciate trans people, and she like has openly been transphobic before and has used Caitlyn's birth name and all that stuff. But like just seeing a trans person in the media is good for them because they see that like trans people are no different than anybody else, and like if they can see somebody else who's going through a transition like that, they can hopefully look at their child and like be more accepting and realize that it is going to be hard, but you have to love your kid anyways because that's your flesh and blood. Or if not, or if they're adopted, then I mean it's still your kid. So like depending on the person, you can get different reactions from coming out. So I guess I'll just talk about like what happened to me. I came out to my dad 2 weeks ago, and he's always been very quiet about things. My dad told me if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all, so I was hesitant to come out because I wasn't sure how he would react. He just gives me like what I call the silent Tim. So he gives me like the silent parent treatment where like he'll just like not say anything whatsoever and he'll just sit there and like he'll think about it for like 2 days and like get back to me or whatever. But it's like stressful because I never know what he's gonna say and I never know how he's gonna react because he's giving me the silent Tim. Mom is like the complete polar opposite. She's very reactive, she's very like loud about things. She's like said openly homophobic and openly transphobic things to me before. She said that's gross, like I don't know why people would want to do that, like why can't they just stay this way and blah blah blah, why do they feel that way? So dealing with reactions can be hard. Obviously you have to prepare yourself for the negative and you have to prepare yourself for the positive. And when I first started to come out, like when I first started to tell some of like my adult figures in like my last year of high school, my extra year of high school, whatever, who I trust and I knew who would be able to help me out, and they were saying like, oh, do you have a backup plan if something goes wrong? Like, do you have a place to go if you get kicked out? There's a chance of that happening, where families are very homophobic, countries, states, cities are very homophobic, are very transphobic, and stuff like that can happen, and you should always have a backup plan just in case, you know, if you think your parents are gonna be good about it. I know it sounds morbid, it sounds bad to think about something like that. You would expect your parents to always be good people and be open and wanting to like take your child in with open arms no matter what. It's a possibility. And also for them to react badly, which I believe will probably go well. I mean, not so well with one of my parents. And if you think somebody's going to react negatively, you don't have to feel obligated to tell that person, because if it's going to be harmful for you and it's going to hurt you, I would say just don't tell them. If you can avoid telling them, that's good. If you think you can't avoid it, it's something you're gonna have to tell them eventually, then you're just gonna have to like mentally prepare for that and prepare for their negative reaction. And if they react in a way that is unaccepting and they're being rude to you, they're being transphobic, I would say you probably don't need that type of person in your life. And like even with like a family member, like a parent or something, or a sibling, aunt and uncle, like it would be hard, but ultimately you want to have the best life for you. It's not their life, it's yours. You want to live life to the fullest, all that kind of cheesy stuff that you hear all the time. You just have to be confident in who you are and don't let anybody tell you differently. Don't let anybody tell you that you're not the way you are or try to like change your mind, because you need to be concrete in who you are and your sense of self. Hi. Also a good thing for coming out, I would say, is split it up between people. Tell one person at a time. Because having 2 different types of people sitting in the room, you're gonna want to like tailor your response to each person, and it's much easier if you're just doing it one person at a time. So you need to prepare, I guess, for each individual person and how you're gonna talk to them, because it's just easier that way. A different way of coming out to people, if you're not confident doing it in person and you think you could do a better job via words. Hi.
Are you looking at me because I came out via email?
No. There are people I know who came out via email, and there's nothing wrong with that. Come out whatever way you feel comfortable coming out, I guess. Like, I wrote a very lengthy 5-page letter to my parents that will never see the light of day because I just needed to get everything out and kind of decide what I was gonna say, that kind of stuff. I've also seen a lot of people, obviously on YouTube you see a lot of like coming out videos where people are doing it like over the phone, stuff like that. I find phone calls to be more nerve-wracking than talking to people in person. So I wouldn't do something like that, but I mean, if it's easy for you, just pick like the easiest way. Something that you feel personally would be good for you. I can't tell you what to do because I just like word vomited one day to my dad. Anyways, thanks for watching.
Do you like leave requests for any more types of videos you want to
Yeah.
see?
Because this video is getting long, and I know I made a poll and had people decide things that they wanted me to talk about, and I only talked about 1.5, but if you want me to talk about other things, you can leave a request in the comments, or you can send me an ask on Tumblr or Twitter. I'm gonna have all my social media linked in the description box. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed me rambling for the past fucking half an hour or however long I've been filming. I hope I cut it down to at least 5 minutes. That would be really great. Love yourself. Love yourself. I'm so flexible. Okay. Bye. Bye.